Now, I think it's pretty safe to say that the future of the Star Wars franchise seems to be quite expansive, not just with their books, novels, comics, and video games, but also let's not forget about their new Star Wars TV shows, both in live action and animated form, as well as their new Star Wars movies, such as the fourth Star Wars trilogy, as well as a handful of spin-off films that are currently in the works by Disney and Lucasfilm. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, one thing about Disney Star Wars that a lot of fans are very excited about is exactly how it's going to compare, of course, in the next couple of years to the Kenendy era, as I like to call it, which is the sequel trilogy, Solo, and Rogue One. Now, given that I honestly do believe that Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, was a very powerful Star Wars film, keep in mind that there was supposed to be a lot more Darth Vader footage in there that Kathleen Kennedy took out. So she also had a major influence on how the Rogue One, A Star Wars Story film was actually used on the big screen and how it really was connected to the Star Wars fans. Now, when we look at everything related to the future, we do know that Iger and Chapek have a plan here. They have a very big goal in mind to really bring Star Wars to the same exact level as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Mind you that this is going to take a lot of time and effort. I've talked about this before, that it's going to take a very high success rate for a couple of years, at least 3 years minimum, to really get it to that exact level as the MCU. Now, here we are, it is pretty much the end of 2020, time flew by, and we are getting closer to 21, which is also going to be a very important year, because, well, that's going to be the year of the filming of the Kenobi TV series that's going to debut at some point in time in 2022, alongside with the Cassian Andor TV show and other TV shows as well. So, between this time in 2020 and, of course, in the next couple of years where a lot of Star Wars TV shows are going to be released, Iger and Chapek are really trying to really make this major format of the Star Wars brand. Now, on top of this, and now that the sequel trilogy is over, both Bob Iger and Bob Chapek are primarily focused on the new Star Wars universe as well as the new Star Wars trilogy of films that will allow the fans to witness a brand new mythology of the universe throughout this decade. Now, it's explained that the new universe is set to use tons of Star Wars Legends material in order to recapture the hardcore Star Wars fans that left after the sequel trilogy movies and more. Currently, it's described that many changes are being applied over at Lucasfilm in order to regulate the Star Wars brand. However, during and after the premiere of The Rise of Skywalker, many interviews were given to the cast and creators of the sequels. At one point in time, actress Daisy Ridley was questioned about Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy, to where Daisy Ridley was able to reveal that Kennedy had many problems with George Lucas's concepts and ideas for the sequel trilogy, and that Kennedy wanted to detach from the actual fans that grew up with the George Lucas's work, so that Kennedy could actually disable herself from the burden of pleasing the hardcore Star Wars fans. Let me just stop right here for a second, okay? Because this is something that once again proves that Kennedy is very incompetent as the leader of Lucasfilm, as the president of all things Star Wars, right? The fact that she wanted to detach herself from the burden of satisfying the hardcore fans. We're talking about the fans that had been around since 1977. The ultimate Star Wars fans, the most passionate fans out there, right? These are the people that grew up with everything related to the original trilogy back in the 70s and 80s. Big deal. And you know what? I think that Star Wars should always be rooted to George Lucas's work on some level. That's just how it has to be, because he is the man who created it. It's like with Marvel, they stick to the source material. And I always was mind-boggled by Kathleen Kennedy's statements of how there is no source material. There's no books, there's no comics, or even video games that to draw from. Meanwhile, we have a library's worth just sitting there that Kennedy could actually use to inspire the new Star Wars fans and to actually create a new universe in that sense. Kennedy refused to do that and refused to even admit that there are a library's worth of Star Wars content right then and there. So, like I've said, this is yet again another example that Kennedy does not know what she's talking about. Ridley is in the right here. She knows what she's talking about. So I feel for Ridley, I really do, because, you know, let's face it, she's getting far less major blockbuster offers now after The Rise of Skywalker, and she's getting more smaller roles. She's really not getting these big roles. Meanwhile, Adam Driver is pretty much where, you know, Harrison Ford's position was after the sequel trilogy. He's getting more and more big roles now. So Ridley went on to reveal that Kenendy, alright, and this is the surprising piece of all things, is that Kenendy was not one that was so excited about the traditional sense of Star Wars and wanted to create a new set of Star Wars fans that would accept her vision of Star Wars. Ridley went on to reveal and unveil that Kenendy did not care about the questions that were left unanswered from The Last Jedi, and that even Ridley herself admits that this bothered her, given that Disney wanted to follow the format of the original trilogy, and even when the big secrets would be unveiled. Now, Ridley continues to reveal that Kenendy refused to use any of Colin Trevorrow's work from Duel of the Fates, and that there were times in which J.J. Abrams was going to use Colin Trevorrow's work and reworking it into his version of the movie that did not agree well with Kathleen Kenedy. Once again here, you know, we have J.J. Abrams trying to salvage whatever Colin was working on. Colin was really going to do something very reminiscent to Star Wars Legends and everything related to the Force. He really wanted to rely more so on the Force lore that was really going to work closely with George Lucas at the time when he was developing Duel of the Fates. And let me focus on that title, because Duel of the Fates is more Star Wars-y, if you will, than The Rise of Skywalker. The Rise of Skywalker was a very misleading title of the movie. A lot of fans were very upset of what it truly meant, and it really got a lot of fans angered. It really did. But not all the fans, right? So, moving on from this, Colin's work was supposed to actually be, and this is the surprising part as well, was supposed to be a big part of JJ's version of The Rise of Skywalker, and Kenedy decided to rid of all this and deleted it. Ridley admits that JJ was upset and let down of not getting the opportunity to use some of Colin's amazing work that would have explored the origin of the Sith, and even more so to do with the lore from the Clone Wars that would be inserted into The Rise of Skywalker. Ridley even unveiled that there was an entire scene done in which Rey goes into a purgatory state where she is essentially waiting to enter into the netherworld of the Force and is given a second chance to return to the mortal world. This was a scene originally done by Colin Trevorrow and what he wanted to do with the original version of Episode 9. Ridley was also able to state that Kathleen Kenedy was the one responsible for the marketing errors in The Rise of Skywalker, given that Lucasfilm did not quite know what to do in late 2018, and that this was the main reason as to why there was no trailer. This was caused by reshoots because of Kenedy, and that Ridley was very excited during Christmas of 2018 to get a teaser of the film that JJ, George, and Chris were working on that ultimately got canceled by Kathleen Kenedy. Once again, guys, I mean, I'm really not all that surprised about everything that Kathleen Kenedy has done to the sequel trilogy and has done to all the work that JJ, George, and Chris were working on and what Ridley was working on as well. It really seems like that we were going to get a far different version of Episode 9, and that pretty much is a fact. We've gone over this before in the past of all the scenes that they were working on and how it really was going to differ from what J.J. Abrams was working on. You know, how George, J.J., and Chris were working on something very special, and how that in and on itself was very much different to the one that J.J. was working on after the reshoots. So once again, I think that it's a very positive thing right now, given that Kathleen Kenedy no longer has full creative control over Star Wars. She's only working on, mind you, the Leslie Headland Star Wars TV series. And I honestly do think that that's going to fail. It's not going to fall in line with the Star Wars fans. A lot of people out there are going to have issues with that TV show. Granted that it's going to focus on identity politics and woke culture and all that nonsense over the actual story and character development, as we should focus on. So, like I've said before in the past, guys, you know, drop a comment below. Let me know think about all of this in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
to moon, we hear them once again.